Çok çok teşekkürler, ağzınıza sağlık. Evet, UITP Uluslararası Toplu Taşımacılık Derneği'nin onursal başkanı Jarl Eliassen, Avrupa'da toplu ulaşımda gelişmiş teknolojilerle çağ atlatacak yöntemleri biraz sonra bizlerle paylaşıyor olacak. Detayları öğrenmek üzere kendisini sahneye davet ettim. Hello, Mr. Eliassen. Welcome.
Hello.
Please. Yeah, please be quick.
There we are. So you can hear me. Distinguished guests, thank you for being invited. I'm Jarl Eliassen. I work for UITP in Brussels. I'm not a Belgian. I'm Norwegian myself by origin, and I'm seconded to UITP from the Nordic countries, so I come from Norway. I'll tell you a little bit about the approach of information and ticketing within Europe in public transport. So this is not about only payment or electronic transactions. It's also a bit more. It's also about information. But anyhow, the public transport sector, which I represent, is highly interested and is working hard on electronic payments as well. I'll get back to that. What is UITP? Maybe some of you haven't heard of UITP even, but I know there are some members of UITP in the audience, and welcome to you. UITP is a worldwide association for public transport. We have more than 1,400 members in nearly 100 countries all around the world. And we have also offices, regional offices, all around the world as well, also here in Istanbul. We work with our members through committees and commissions. We try to engage our members as much as possible in our work. And of course, the public transport sector is a very diversified sector, covering a lot of areas and a lot of expertise in many different skills and disciplines. So we try to cover them all. I think we have more than 20 different professional work groups and items and subjects we follow. We, as representatives for the public transport sector, advocacy and strategy is very important for our work. And in this respect, we produce action points and policy briefs or position papers, offering detailed policy recommendations for local, regional, and national authorities, and of course also for the EU. We also regularly publish newsletters, both regional and thematic ones. But now to my own presentation. I will focus on seamless ticketing and why it's so difficult to develop seamless public transport with easy access to information and with smart and available ticket solutions. Because as you all know, probably many of you have tried, especially if you don't use public transport every single day, you can find it a little bit hard to get to know and understand the system and how it works. So I will also try to answer the question of what can be controlled politically and what can come by itself or can be done by the market. And also how far we have reached in our strive for integrated ticketing and information systems in Europe. How far away from this seamless public transport travel are we? Is it a dream or is it a reality? Let's get back to the start. Why do we really need pan-European ticketing schemes? First of all, the whole idea of the EU is, of course, to break down barriers, to break down borders, and make Europe work more seamlessly, with less hinders in all respects. At the same time, deregulation and competition within the public transport sector, it has led to less or reduced cross-acceptance of tickets. It was easier some 20, 30, 40 years ago when you had big incumbent state-owned or municipal-owned company, monopolistic companies with taking care of the arrangements for ticketing everywhere. With competition, with deregulation, with different fair pricing ideas, smart yield pricing and so on, it becomes more complicated, also for the end users and for the passengers we are dependent on. So we see that passengers, they are increasingly left to consult several operators instead of shopping in one place. Or they have to run around, especially when you travel with long-distance rail, it's not easy at all. If you look across the shoulder and look into the deregulated airline industry, we see strong alliances and an abundance of price comparisons tools on the internet. You can go there, you can shop by yourself, you can do it quite easily with your credit card, and you can choose among multiple operators. In local public transport and in regional public transport and going by train through Europe, it's not that easy. So we lack these alliances and we lack this seamless mobility. This is a headache for people who want to travel public. So why is this problem? What's it all about? Well, local public transport is first of all a local responsibility all over Europe, like in Turkey. And of course, the ticketing industry, many of them represented here, they live well with it because business-wise, it's a good business case in having a lot of different systems in different towns. And also the bulk of public trips are made locally. They are maybe only between 10 and 20% of all public transport rides are made cross-border or cross-regional and so on. Most of them are local. There is, of course, a solution to find in open data, especially on the information side. But unfortunately, there is still some resistance towards open data within our sector, so we are working hard on it. But I mentioned the EU when I began my presentation, and why does the EU really care about travel planners and e-ticketing? This picture illustrates what happened back in 2010. If you recall the volcano which erupted in Iceland, it spit out a lot of ash and gray smoke, and all airplanes were basically grounded all over Europe. And so were thousands and hundreds of thousands of people not being able to get home by plane, by their flights, which they were depending on. So all these people trying to scramble home, also politicians in the parliament, in Brussels and in Strasbourg and so on, they didn't get home either. So what did they do? Well, for the first time in their life, they turned around and they tried to buy a train ticket. And of course, that wasn't easy. They didn't know how to pay. They didn't know where to go. The website wasn't there or it wasn't functioning. And they had to keep jumping from site to site in order to find a ticket. They found it very complicated. This was really an eye-opener for politicians. So from then on, they've been focusing on why doesn't the rail sector work better in Europe? Why doesn't the public transport sector work more openly and more seamless? So what can we then expect from the EU? What can be controlled politically and what will come by itself? What can the market really deliver as well? The EU, basically, they have three set of tools. They have research and development programs. So they have money, they finance programs, they can steer and guide research and development in a specified direction. They can regulate, they can make laws and regulations, directives, or they can threaten. They can threaten the market or the industry by regulating. And often this threat of regulating is also a tool set which can actively be used. And last but not least, they can standardize and make guidelines of best practice, how to do things, how to make the system work for seamless mobility. But for sure, the EU will not build any information system or any big bang ticketing system. That's not the role of the EU. The Commission, they will facilitate the process for the provision of EU-wide multimodal travel information and ticketing. They will facilitate. They will not make anything. They will not buy anything. That's for sure. And they have facilitated a lot. There are lots of initiatives. There are lots of papers and documents and projects being financed by EU the last 20 years in ticketing and information. I think there are more than 100 such projects which have been more or less successful, all of them. But none of them have really led to any change in the marketplace. We are still traveling locally. We have still to cope with different technologies and different systems, different cards, different information systems, jump from site to site, etc. But there's a lot of things ongoing, and important work is ongoing in the Shift to Rail project, which is a gigantic EU, partly EU-funded and industry-funded technology project. And within this Shift to Rail, there's a project called IT to Rail, and also a project called FSM, which is working very hard on cracking the code. There are a growing number of collaborative ticketing initiatives outside of the EU, independently from the EU as well. So the market has responded, the industry has responded. We have the Smart Ticketing Alliance, we have the Open Mobile Ticketing Alliance, we have OSPT, we have the European Travelers Club, we have the full service model, the FSM, etc., etc. There's lots of such initiatives, and they're all working hard in order to realize seamless traveling and ticketing in Europe. One of the most important projects is the IT to Rail project. It's a 50-50 financed project shared between the industry and the Commission, EU Commission, and some of the largest industrial partners in the PT industry in Europe are on board in that project. Amadeus, Thales, Unife, and so on, they're all inside. Also SNCF, Trenitalia, and so on. And they are working hard on proving that it's possible to make better systems than we have today. There are also other important projects as listed here on the screen. The FSM project is a purely industry-driven project with Deutsche Bahn in the lead, where they basically are trying to solve the technological issue of each train company or railway company today having their own systems with their individual plugs and technical solutions which really doesn't fit together. They hope to be able to make a standard, and they've done a lot of progress in this. So by next year, in summer of 2016, the FSM work is expected to deliver. You have probably heard about the EU's fourth railway package, which is a package which is set out to deregulate the railway business. As you know, the airline industry was deregulated some 15 years ago, but national rail travel, railway business in Europe is not deregulated. It's up to the member states, and most member states have large incumbent rail companies with a monopoly of transport in their country or in the regions, more or less a monopoly. With Deutsche Bahn in Germany, with SNCF in France, Trenitalia in Italy, and Renfe in Spain, and so on. They're all big monopolistic incumbent companies. So there is no free competition at all. This is being dealt with in the fourth railway package, where the aim is to deregulate the whole sector. And this is now coming through. And within this fourth railway package, an important issue is also to solve the ticketing issue, the ticketing and information issue. UITP's position is to make sure that we get a better multimodal information ticketing system than today. We partner in the IT to Rail project, and we try to convince everyone to build solutions from a bottom-up perspective, so that we don't get a big bang solution from above, tread down over our heads, because there is there has been done far too much investments in this sector already, so we need to build bottom-up solutions. We also urge that we should do this in a stepwise approach, and we have also allied with the Smart Ticketing Alliance, which is one of the maybe most important initiatives in realizing this idea of smart ticketing. The Smart Ticketing Alliance, it represents a platform for cooperation and coordinated approach for this idea of ticketing interoperability. Behind it is ITSO, the main scheme holder in the United Kingdom, Calypso, an important scheme holder in French and Latin-oriented countries, AFIMB, which is the state agency in France for ticketing and information, and last but not least, the VDV e-ticket service, which is the umbrella organization for ticketing in Germany, and then UITP, which I represent. We have all gone together and set up this initiative of the Smart Ticketing Alliance in order to help and assist the establishment of an interoperable fare ticketing system in Europe. The goal is to manage the transition from the existing standalone ticketing schemes we have today to one where the customer seamlessly can undertake and receive information on their journey, and when they can select their preferred tickets and devices and technology on their own. So we leave it more to the customer, and our job of the STA, or the Smart Ticketing Alliance, will then be to assure the security and the integration and the interoperability of the device and the information needed in order to perform the ticketing itself. Of this, of course, we are completely dependent on working very closely with the industry as well. So where are we in Europe? Is it a completely white map? No. There are countries in Europe with nationwide ticketing systems working perfectly, multimodally even, in many countries. But unfortunately, most of these countries, they are rather small. So compared to Istanbul, they are next to nothing. Without saying anything wrong about these countries, they are midgets. Denmark, we all know Denmark. It's a lovely country, but it is a small country. It's probably an easy market to cope with nationwide traveling. And they have a nationwide ticketing system covering all modes of transport all over Denmark. Touchless technology, modern system, and it works. Sweden is developing one. They haven't come as far as Denmark, but they're on the track. We also have a very good system in Luxembourg, not a really big country that either. But the interesting thing with Luxembourg is that Luxembourg, they've made a system which is interoperable with their neighboring countries. So it's interoperable with the systems in Germany and in Belgium. So technically, it's a very interesting system. In the Netherlands, you probably know, some of you, that we've had a nationwide public transport ticketing scheme through the OV chip card solution since 2011. In fact, it started already with testing already in 2005. And it covers the complete country and all modes with trains and buses. So any citizen in Holland, or tourist for that sake, with one single card, the OV chip card, you can travel everywhere. You upload your card and you travel as you wish. In Germany, they've not come so far yet, but they are working hard on finding a solution which can combine all newly adopted smartphone ticketing solutions, because the smartphone is having a breakthrough in the German market. But unfortunately, the smartphone solutions in Germany are based on local solutions. So we have like 20, 30 different solutions in each city, each Verbund. And this is being coped with the so-called IPSI standard, which eventually will make it more seamless for users to use. UITP has always been a strong spokesman for open data. And we believe that, especially for the for the information side, a lot can be achieved in order to make it easier to travel public transport if you open up your data and allow third-party players to interact with your information. UK is probably the country in Europe who has come furthest, who is most advanced in this respect. And they have more than 500 active open data-based apps in London alone, more than 500. And these are being used. TfL, the London Public Transport Authority, they don't have any app or any travel planner themselves. They've left all of this to the market, and the public are more than happy with it. We also have the Open Trip Planner with OpenStreetMap solutions. It's being taken on in many different cities, both in the States and in Europe. We also have some commercial apps which are growing fast, and maybe you know them. Some of them are also available here in Istanbul. We have Ali, we have CityMapper, and we have MoveIt. And some of them depend on making arrangements and deals with all public transport authorities, agreeing on exchanging data. Others, they scrape data more or less or do it on their own, regardless of the consent of the public transport operator or not. I'm coming to my end of the presentation, and I'd like to focus on a UITP event which will elaborate further on the ticketing and information issue, and that's the IT Trans conference in Karlsruhe now in the beginning of March next year. It's a big event for UITP. It's one of the larger events we arrange, and it's focusing only on ticketing and information. Usually gathers like 600-700 delegates from all over the world. And if you're interested in following this subject more, please come to Karlsruhe and we'll meet up. You find more information about the Karlsruhe event at our website, ittrans.org. So, thank you very much. Thank you for being invited.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.